So hello everybody, how you doing? Right, let's get Charlie in the feed, and I think then we're ready to go. So hello everybody, welcome to Whining On. My name is Matthew Bowden, the incorrigible rogue, and today we have Charlie Caper. Charlie, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, excellent.
Nice
very
to see
good
you.
today.
Cool. Can I just get you to begin, just to say a little bit about yourself?
That's a very wide-ranging thing.
Yeah, just a little professional, in a sentence, a professional synopsis. We'll get more into it after, just for people who might not know who you are as we join the video.
I'm an old street magician, in a sense. Well, maybe in the middle of the generations of street magicians right now. Started out 20 years ago in Covent Garden for 2 seasons, and then I traveled around for 10 years, just traveling. And then I've been kind of in Stockholm most or half the time, and the other half traveling. And nowadays I don't do street shows so much, but maybe like 2 months a year or something like that. Mainly festivals, but some street, and yeah.
Okay, cool. So you're a magician primarily. Would you call yourself an entertainer, or would you call yourself a magician? I mean, I know that it overlaps a lot, but
yeah, of course, I would probably say magician, because that's kind of my focus in some sense.
Yeah.
I'm a bit of a magic heavy magician in some ways.
And were you a magician from a child? Was it something you did from a very young age, or did it come to you later on in life?
Yeah. No, I started out very, like 8 years old, maybe, something like this.
Okay, why? Were you a nerve? I know a lot of magicians I talked to, they were kind of nervous young people, and they used magic as a way to socialize. Was there anything like that?
Yeah, probably. Well, in some ways, but I was just like a nerdy kid in some ways. I hung out a lot at the library, and I found a book by accident, and I got fascinated by magic. And then I was in a weird situation where I went on this really long, kind of really boring holiday with my family, where there was nothing to do. And then I had one of these magic books that I'd borrowed from the library. And so when I came back from that holiday, I actually knew how to do some magic. Some of the slightly more difficult things.
Do you remember the name of the book?
Yeah, it would have been one of 3 books, because we only had 3 books. Now you're breaking up here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You are breaking up a little bit. If you do have a better place for signal, maybe we should migrate.
Well, I'm going to try to move around in here and see if this is going to be better.
So Charlie told me before we began the broadcast he has a little bit of a connection issue in different areas in his flat. So I think we used the nicest looking place, but it wasn't necessarily the best connected area of the flat. So now we get a tour of Charlie's flat.
Oh, yeah. Haha. Well, I moved here. This should probably be better. Is that better?
Yep, that's better.
Yeah. So, yeah, it would have probably been a book that in English is called The Magic Book by Harry Lorraine. But they only had 3 books at the library where I grew up. So it would have been one of those. Okay. I'm just going to do an internet swap here, because now I'm in a better...
Cool, no problem. So we'll talk to Charlie a little bit later in the interview. Charlie did a show which I'm fascinated about, and I want to learn more about it, with robotics. And so did a show that mixed magic with having robotics and robots, by the thing of robotics, acting out in the show and playing parts in the show. There was an AI that was designed by a separate company that Charlie uses in the show, and I haven't seen the show myself. I'm fascinated actually to find out how the show worked and how he developed it. And I actually found out, which we'll find out more of it later on, that Charlie wasn't a trained engineer, which I assumed. I assumed that Charlie began in university doing engineering, then did magic as a hobby and whatever, moved on from there. But in fact, he learned all of the robotic stuff, to which he now does as a job, while creating this show. Fascinating. I'm really looking forward to hearing more of it. So let's get Charlie back in the feed. I think he's back with us. Hey, Charlie.
Hello. Now I have super fast internet, so
happy days.
It will happen again.
So yeah, you were talking about these one of 3 magic books, and it was
it would have been The Magic Book by Harry Lorraine, probably, because they only had 3, and the other ones were Card Manipulation by Dr. Jacob Taub, and another one was called Close Up Magic by a Swedish author. So it would have been.
Are these magic books for magicians? They're not like children's first magic books.
No, they're quite fairly proper magic books, I would say.
And did
So
8-year-old you have difficulty getting involved in the text with that? Was it problematic to try and understand what's designed for people who are working magicians?
those type of magic books are kind of tricky because I mean it's a lot of grab the deck of cards with your left hand, put your left pinky finger 2/3 along the right edge of the cards, put your first finger halfway down the front edge of the, like, it's kind of that. Now put some light pressure on the upper left corner with your thumb. So that's, I mean, that's kind of tricky for anyone to kind of learn in that way. But I was a reader. I was a nerdy kid, so I was probably like reading Lord of the Rings at the same time in some ways. So following it would not have been too tricky text-wise. But I mean, I was quite lucky in a sense that I got thrown in the deep end with the magic, and I didn't start like with a crappy magic set box thing. There are no good ones, I think. It's like they're all terrible. If I want to buy one for my niece and nephew or whatever, I wouldn't know which. Like, they're all crap.
Well, maybe that's a future product to be made.
Yeah, but I wouldn't know what to put in them either. So it's not too easy.
So did you have? So you began kind of showing magic a little bit. You began performing a few of these tricks.
Yeah. So I was like, I went on that holiday, and when I came back, I could basically do a couple of proper card tricks that would impress adults, kind of thing.
And who were you showing these card tricks to? Because I assume you learned by performing. You didn't just learn by the mechanics of it.
No. I was a pretty terrible performer up until I started doing street shows, I would say. But I would show them to my parents and to friends and stuff. And then I started doing some gigs when I was maybe like 13 or 14. Just little.
So you kept doing it for 5 years in between this. You kept working at it. It became something you were very interested in.
Yeah, it's like a hobby, kind of.
And were your parents performers? Were they entertainers? Was there any kind of, theatrical influence in the house?
No, extremely little. None. Probably less than most places in many ways. Amazing parents, though. I'm very, very lucky. I've realized talking with other people about how they grew up. I was very lucky with my parents in that sense, but no, not a lot of culture or theater or anything like that.
So why did you start doing shows at 13? If this is a hobby and just playing, what drove you to stand on a stage or stand on a plinth or any other situation where you're engaging with a crowd of people showing these tricks? What was the drive?
Well, to do shows like that, I think the drive was mainly that they paid me, actually.
Okay.
I wasn't really into getting on stage when I was a kid. It took some getting used to learn to enjoy it, and like.
When you say you weren't really into it, are you saying that you were uncomfortable doing it?
A little bit. I think a lot of people get into doing shows because they really like to kind of get out there and that kind of attention and stuff. But I don't think that's really been it for me in my life so much. I mean, I really like it now, and in some ways, when I don't perform for a couple of months, I get a real sense of abstinence and like the shakes. But like all of us have now in many ways.
We've all been going through Turkey on that one.
Yeah. But I don't have it. I haven't got that drive so much. I was kind of more interested in the actual magic part, I would say, and learning how to do these tricky things, complex magic tricks and stuff. And then there's no point in learning that if you're not going to show it to anyone. So that was more like a byproduct of the real interest, which was the magic stuff.
And so did you work on the presentation? Was that part of the mechanics of it? So when you're learning these complex tricks, they're nothing without presenting them right, if I'm correct in thinking that.
Yeah, to some extent at least. I no, but I didn't really work a lot on presentation until much later. I was a complete like magic nerd for the first like 12 or 13 years of doing magic. I was just like focusing on doing the moves and stuff. And doing it and doing kind of good magic.
Did you emulate people? Did you have magicians that you saw that you kind of aped their deliveries?
Not so much at that time, but there's definitely magicians that have inspired me that I've kind of emulated. Not super clearly, I would say, but there's definitely some heavy influences.
I was just interested then, but we can go to if there are more influences as we go on in time, we can touch on them now, but later. But I was just thinking for when you were a young person, how you got over being uncomfortable on stage and having this kind of not a kind of compulsion to go and perform, but you want to do it because of the thing that you've trained and learned and been fascinated with. I was just wondering how you got over that.
I actually don't think I got over it until I started doing street shows. And then after like 100 street shows, I started being comfortable.
After 1,000 people have ignored you, it doesn't hurt.
Exactly. After banging my head into the wall 5,000 times, it stopped hurting.
Yes. And so, do you want to tell us a little bit more about what happened between doing your first show when you were 13 to doing your first street show when I assume you're 18, 19? You're kind of a man by this point.
Yeah, well, I actually tried once to do, I tried for a little bit to do street shows when I was like 14 or something, and then as a juggler, I did juggling street shows, but I stopped because I'd never seen a street show. I just kind of like, I knew about, they were like in the collective consciousness of things, and I thought I can do that. I thought, but then I'd never seen any show. I didn't know anything, and I just tried to do street shows on my own. And it was
where were you doing them?
I did it. I tried like in the city, and I tried in
Stockholm.
In Malmo. In the south of Sweden where I'm from. I tried at Kiviks Marknad, which is this kind of weird market, like market, huge weekend market that's once a year or something. It's like a big, kind of famous big market. I don't know what the equivalent would be in the UK, but yeah, at this I tried there.
It's like a rural market.
Yeah, and I once saw a street performer up in Falun. I hitchhiked up to the north of Sweden to this big folk music festival, and that was the first street performer I saw. And then I was probably like 16 or 17, and like 14 years later or something, I was sitting in a sauna at like the evening of a festival, talking with Shane, Space Cowboy, and we talked a little bit about our history, and he told me once that, and then he had traveled to the north of Sweden, and I was like, and then it was Shane that I saw, and he was probably like 16 or 17, traveling alone in Europe from Australia.
Yeah, which is the other side of the world.
Yeah, it's pretty bizarre.
What also strikes me is that our world is it's a big planet, and the street performance world, at least with circle shows, is quite a small world. People talk about seeing each other from all over the globe quite consistently.
It's amazing. Or if you talk about street perform, or like if you're talking with someone anywhere in the world that you just met, and the concept of street performing comes up, and then maybe they'll tell you about, I once saw this street performer in blah blah blah, and you're like, yeah, I used to live with that guy. It's weird how
beers with him. Yeah. Or you hear the trick, and you're like, oh, this guy.
Yeah, it's weird how tiny it becomes.
Yeah, and so just to drag back onto your chronology, because I feel like we're going to touch a lot on this. And on the kind of the issues of street performance as we talk about beginning.
Well, yes, actually, I was a juggler for a while as well. I started juggling when I was like 13 or something. I saw Cirkus Cirkör, which is this Swedish Cirque du Soleil, the Swedish version of Cirque du Soleil, and they did their first ever show, and it was incredible. And I would have been like 14 or 15. It's like early mid 90s, and they had an incredible juggler called Mintan who did these insanely nice 3-ball routines, and I got very inspired by that, and I started juggling. I also rode a unicycle when I was 8 for weird reasons.
Was
I
that
used to
just for
ride a
fun?
unicycle to school. Yeah, I just thought it was a cool thing to ride a unicycle. So I mainly used it as a mode of transport. And I don't know if you unicycle, but it's a terrible mode of
Yes.
transport. It's
Well,
like,
it's if you've got a big wheel, you can get about. It's definitely not as
right.
easy
Well,
as a
then yeah, then you
bicycle.
can, yeah. But
But what's clear from this, it seems, is that you didn't have issue with applying yourself as a young man. You got interested in stuff, and then you learn how to do it.
yeah. Well, I have a real trouble applying myself to anything I don't enjoy. Like really bad problem. But the stuff I enjoy, I can start doing them, and then suddenly it's 4 o'clock at night, and I'm like, oh, what happened?
Get kind of
So
hyper focused.
yeah, if I get into something, then I really get into it, and then kind of everything else falls by the wayside, and then I realize, oh, I haven't showered for 4 days, and like
But I've learned this really intricate
yeah,
pattern.
exactly,
Yeah.
worth it.
So, did you not think about doing university then? As you get to the end of your school life, I assume that you, by the sounds of it, you didn't do uni. You became a entertainer. Am I right in thinking that?
No, well, I did go to uni a little bit, but I haven't got a degree or anything. I just studied lots of random things.
And was that post school?
Post school, is that like after high school, kind of?
After your high school? Yeah.
Yeah. So I did high school, and then I went to university for like 2.5, 3 years or something like that. But just studied random different things, and really enjoyed it that way. So it's today I still don't have a degree, but I've studied a lot of weird subjects.
Like, can you give us a name of a few of the subjects?
Well, for most of the time I studied double full time, so I kind of have the equivalent of 5 years of university study, but um, in just random subjects. I studied a lot of philosophy, some psychology, math, computer science, history, folkloristics.
What's folkloristics?
Like the study of folklore.
Okay, I've got you.
And like these kind of folklore stories, everything from old folklore to like these modern weird like stories
urban
that
myths.
get passed around. Yeah, like urban myths is part of folkloristics as well. In classical mythology, I've studied.
And how were you allowed to study all these different things? Did you not join the university with a kind of an outcome already established?
In Sweden, that's not necessary, and it's free, so it's easy to become kind of loose with your the way you look at it. No, it's just like there's often just you need to have achieved certain things to get into the course, but there's no demands of. And then actually, if you study a certain thing, like certain pieces of a puzzle, you can then put them together into a degree.
Okay, but essentially the focus is more on you're acquiring knowledge, and the infrastructure is happy for you to acquire knowledge to use.
Yeah, but that's what's the focus for me. I think most people in Sweden it's like it is in the UK as well, kind of. But it's also possible to just kind of pick and mix and then see if you can put it together into a degree.
And so at the end of this, is this when you think I'm going to try and be a street performer again?
No, it's a weird story. I was really into juggling at that point. Now at this point I would be like 21 or something like this. And I went on a Eurorail trip with my girlfriend at the time, and we were kind of couch surfing before the website Couchsurfing existed around, and there was this thing called Juggle Stay. I don't know if you ever heard about this. It was like a couch surfing for jugglers.
Wow.
Like a Craigslist style couch surfing for jugglers. And we found this really nice couple in London, and we stayed at their house in one of their with these. They were jugglers, and we stayed there. We were supposed to stay there for 3 days, and we ended up staying for like 2 weeks because we had a nice, like, a good time with them, and it was nice.
And so what do you do when you do this? Do you just go there and go, hey, so what props do you have?
No, it was kind of like a web, like it was like a web forum. And we would you just send a message like, hey, I'm a juggler from Sweden. We're traveling through Europe, and like we hear you have a spare room. Can we stay there for a couple of days? And they were like, yeah, come and stay. Like, and then we kind of, it's like couch surfing in some ways, like the website that exists now.
But more I meant is
jugglers.
when you met the people, when you arrived at their home, because you've met through this juggling thing, was there an instant like shop talk kind of thing?
Yeah, a little bit. Of course, to some extent, I would say. And we probably went to like because they lived in Crystal Palace at the time. And we probably went to the juggling. I think there was a juggling club in Brixton that we went to.
Very famous juggling club in
Right?
Brixton.
Yeah. So we probably went there together, and then we just hung out and like.
Cool.
It was nice.
And so when you left, did you think, right, I'm going to come back to London and become a busker? Did you see shows?
Well, we definitely found. I didn't see any shows then. But I remember walking through Soho and feeling really good. Like, this is nice. Like, I enjoy the feeling in here. Like, it was really. It felt really good. There was a sense of just like freedom and opportunity, and like I really liked aspects of London, and really liked these people that we stayed with. And then the next year in Sweden, it's really difficult to get a summer job if you're a student, and it actually comes from the fact that it's free to study, and then you also get to borrow money from the state, and you get some to live off while you're studying, so you don't have to have a job at the same time. But you don't get that money for like the summer months. So in like the end of May, June, then you suddenly have hundreds of thousands of students that all need a job at the same time. And so if you don't have anything like lined up from the year before, you're fucked basically. You can't get a job at all. And in London, it's pretty easy to get a job. Like a student type job is very simple.
Might not be a great job, but you can get a job.
Yeah, you can get it. You can go and get a job like within a week. At least at that point, that was the case. Work in a shop and whatever. And these guys that we had stayed with 6 months before, they got married and they moved together, and they have 2 apartments now. And they moved into one of them, and then they just. I think they asked us if we wanted to live in it for a while, and it was like summer was coming. We were like, yeah, we'll go to London over the summer and just live there and work, and we went there, and it was really fun. And my girlfriend got a job instantly. I think she worked at Topshop for a while.
Just went out of business, Topshop. It went to liquidation. Receivership this week, I think. Yeah,
we live in strange times. I got a job as a translator. It took a little longer, but I got a job as a translator from English to Swedish, and then for a big website. And then very quickly they realized that I could program. So then I got a job as a computer. I got kind of promoted to the computer programming team. And then we were supposed to go home, and I had like a decent job. Like I've got like the job that I'm kind of after when I finish studying. So we just stayed, basically.
And I suppose because part of the EU, there's not an issue with visas or anything like that. That wasn't a concern then.
So there was no admin whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm planning possibly my girlfriend to go abroad next year, and it's become this whole big problem.
Really, it's insane. Yeah, at that point there was there wasn't even a thought.
So where does performing come into this then? You've got the life you wanted. You wanted to be a computer programmer. You are. Why go and do street shows?
Well, I started hanging out a lot with magicians, I guess, and I started hanging out at the Magic Circle on their Monday meetings, and then there was this weird Brazilian magician, Felipe, moved into funny guy. He moved in to live with us because we had at that point we had gotten an apartment in Camden, this small place. But we had 2 rooms, and we lived 4 people in this 2-room apartment. Yep. And so Felipe was one of the guys living with us, and I think we were out walking in Covent Garden one day, and we met. We saw a street magic show.
Do you remember who you saw?
Yeah, it was a guy called Gary Stocker.
Yes,
you know Gary?
Now he owns a circus now. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the guy who gave up being a solicitor in his own law firm to go and be a street performer.
Yeah. Oh well, he's actually a trained solicitor, but he never worked as a solicitor. But he's done a lot of weird stuff. He's sold a circus now, actually.
Okay.
He's a general entrepreneur.
Yes.
Always doing. Super smart guy. Really, really, really clever. And his street show.
If I was right in thinking this, didn't he write a paper in university for his legal degree, which was so advanced that they had to get one of the chief justices in the country to come and read the paper to see if they could actually print it? There was some story like that.
That does sound like a myth. I don't think it's true, but it like he's a brilliant guy, so it's like something similar probably happened. It could have been that he tricked them all into believing that this had happened.
Maybe
in some way it's more impressive. I don't know. It's like
part of the mythology.
Yeah. He's a brilliant guy. But and actually at this point I would have been like 20 maybe, or 20, that kind of age, 21. And he was probably like 16, 15 or 16. He's a couple of years younger than me, and his street show at that point was really good. Like, it was really good already.
Why was it really good? What makes a good show, particularly pertaining to this show?
Well, he is a very charming rogue. Gary is extremely charming. Does weird risks. Takes weird risks in a way that I never did.
What do you mean by a weird risk? What's an example of a weird risk you take?
I'm not sure about a good example, but one act that he did for a while that was a bit. He was. He's always been slightly unethical. I don't know, as well. One act that he did was he had this box of eggs, and then he had a kid on stage, and he would say, "So in this 6-pack of eggs, one of the eggs was hard-boiled this morning by my mother, and the other 5 of these eggs were hard-boiled, and one of them is raw. And you and me, kid, we're gonna take turns taking an egg and smacking it to the top of our head, and whoever gets the raw one loses. You start." And all the eggs were raw. and it's so bizarre. But he get into this weird. I remember particularly one show when the kid was like hesitating, and he's holding this raw egg, and there was some situation where Gary's like. He said something, and the kid like felt like the whole audience were gonna make him do it or whatever. So the kid is holding the egg, and he's like standing around, about to throw it at anyone. And it's that kind of sharp situations that we all know some performers that can get to a point where it's like there's genuine, like, what the heck is gonna happen now?
Tension and jeopardy.
And it's real, like it's genuine tension and jeopardy.
Yes.
Sorry,
carry on. So you saw him, and you decided you wanted to do street shows. Is that the correct chain of events?
No, I didn't really think I could do it, because I kind of had tried when I was 15 and failed. And then we started, or mainly Felipe as well, but we started hanging out with Gary, and I started hanging out with Gary a lot. So during that time, I basically spent every weekend hanging out with Gary in Covent Garden. And at this point, there was very few shows. Like there was almost no shows on Magic Corner, on the corner of James Street. There was basically, Gary was doing shows there, and many times there was no one else there. Many days. So we would sit there and we would sit in the cafe down the side, and we would play chess and just discuss magic tricks. We would invent new magic tricks. Sometimes one of us would run over to Davenport's by Trafalgar and just buy props so we could then keep working on the trick. Like we would just sit there all day. Every weekend.
You're not doing this with an aim of doing a show. You're just doing this for the joy of doing
just
it.
Because I really enjoyed magic, and I like playing chess, and it was really nice to sit there with Gary and drink coffee and play chess and talk about life and build magic tricks. And we spent a lot of time discussing his show. And then I was working on another job at that point as a programmer as well, making games, and it was really intense. So I realized I have to quit. Was
it crunch? I believe they call it now.
Yeah, it was just like madness, really hardcore. And the kind of thing where they constantly would say like, oh, we know it's really hard now, but just after this deadline, there's nothing, and then it's going to be calm for a month or two, and then you get to that point and like, oh, this thing came in, and we have to. So I realized after a while that it's never going to change. It's going to be 70-hour work weeks, like all the time. And then I decided to quit, and I thought, then I decided I'm going to be a street performer. And I tried a couple of times with Gary.
Doing a double act?
Shows. No, alone, but with him, like as a person to bounce ideas off and to help,
like a mentor.
Like someone who can teach you a little bit. And I'd failed at that too. It was hard, and I came up with a lot of like excuses and stuff to myself. Like I would wake up in the morning and I was supposed to go out and do street shows because it was Saturday. At that point, I was still working Monday to Friday, and then look at, oh, it's probably going to rain today, and I was saying, oh, I have to do laundry, or like just come up with some excuse to not do it because I knew it was going to be painful. Well, because of the pain.
So you're avoiding it. You're trying to avoid the pain.
Yeah. It's hard when you're doing something and then everyone just suddenly walks off. Right? So I kind of, but I could see this in myself. Like I'm avoiding this, huh? And then I came up with a weird plan, which was to go to. I went to like Southeast Asia with my girlfriend. We spent like 5 months just living on a beach and spending all the money that we had saved up. And then I came back after those 5 months, and I got an apartment in London, and I paid for 1 month of rent. And then like 2 days later, I was basically in a situation of, well, if I want to eat something today, got to go out and make 15 pounds yeah, in the street. And it turns out hunger is a really good motivator. And so I started doing, then I went out and did shows. And I had a whole summer of doing shows in Covent Garden with Gary. And I think that summer actually was the summer that they banned Trafalgar. Or no, Leicester Square, sorry.
Okay, so there was a thing, we were talking about this just before the interview. Leicester Square was worked for a long time, quite intensively.
Mainly by musicians, but yes. It was.
And Melvin as well. Bruno and Melvin, I believe, had amp-pores that were so loud you could hear it almost at Covent Garden.
Yeah,
was the story I was told.
Yeah, it's very true. And then at that summer, which was my first summer in Covent Garden, kind of halfway through the summer, they banned Leicester Square, and then Bruno came from Leicester Square and started playing on Magic Corner. so me and Gary spent a long time hanging out with Bruno there, and Dave would also play there. Musician Dave.
Christian Dave.
Yes, yeah, Christian Dave. He would be there, and there was this American guy who plays a weird type of Chapman stick. Elijah was his name. He only came in for like 2 seasons or something, but he was there a little bit. So we were kind of alternating.
The Chinese brothers there as well, playing the one-stringed. Chinese
but they were down
instrument.
on another corner. They were never on our pitch.
Okay.
We would always hear them playing the same song. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat, and I hear it.
Did you get better then? Did you worked out, and how did you get better? So what was your first show like when you went out first day to make that 15 quid to eat?
It was probably pretty terrible.
What was it? What was the components?
Ooh, I would probably have done mainly card tricks, probably an ambitious card routine or something, a trick where the card jumps to the top of the pack. Probably a coin trick. And at the beginning, my finale was a chop cup routine. I don't know if it's kind of like a cups and balls with one ball. And this is a funny story, but it's I would do it in their hands. So the cup would be in their hands, and suddenly the ball would appear under the cup while it was in their hands. And I came up with this beautiful vanish. I shouldn't give too much away, but there's this magic device that you can basically throw something into. In the right movement, it vanishes. And I had this beautiful move. I'll see if I can. So I would pick up the ball that was going to vanish. I would pick it up, and then I would fake put it into this hand, and then I would pick up the magic wand, and I would make this kind of wave with the wand over the ball over here that was going to vanish. And in this waving movement, I would throw the ball into this hidden pocket, and it looked super good.
And then both hands can be inspected.
Yeah, it's super clean. Yeah. But I would miss once in a while because it's very hard. So even though I was very good at it, I would miss maybe 1 in 20, and then it's terrible because the ball is just like boing, 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 boing.
And it's the end of the show as well. You've wasted all that time.
Yeah, it wasn't the exact finale. Nick Nicholas is here. He's actually a big influence from the early. I'll tell you a Nick story later on. So I would do this vanish, but this will explain Gary's sense of humor and personality. He would stand behind the stage, and he bought some balls that were exactly like the ones I had. And very often he would just throw one out that would bounce on the ground. And I would be like, fuck, I thought I got it. I thought I hit. Like, I would just see this ball. But yeah,
so
sorry.
It's not a massive finish, right? It's not a huge finish for the show. Did you get it working? Did you get it tight? Did you get that?
So and so, but there's still like a lemon appearing in their hands under the cup. There's some stuff in there, so it was a kind of a decent small finale. I was doing quite small shows. The Magic Corner was a very small pitch, and we were very careful to not block it. It's easy if you do too big a show there, you block up the whole place, and then you get in trouble, as we might get to actually. Because with the current problems in Covent Garden, it could be interesting for you to hear about what went on then. Nick, I saw Nick joined here, and he was actually also one reason why I started doing street shows in some ways, because one of them, before that summer before I quit my job and decided really when I'm going to do street shows, I was hanging out with Gary, and and Nick showed up for like a week or something, or a couple of days. To do shows on he was on the Magic Corner then, and one night we're in a pub, and Nick was showing someone some magic tricks, and I think when we started playing around, because I instinctively did stuff like he's doing a magic trick for someone, and I would just stand and I would just hold up a salt shaker behind their ear and he would just reach behind the ear and make the salt shaker appear, like, and we would kind of have some funny teamwork going on. And I think that led Nick to respect me a bit as a magician in some ways.
He knew you got it. Basically, there was an intuitive understanding between you two because you.
Yeah, and I wasn't a street performer. I hadn't at that, but I think he respected me as a magician, and we talked a lot. And that, I think that's also was one thing where I felt like, wow, if that guy has some respect for my abilities, I can probably do this.
Why'd you say that guy? If that guy?
Well, Nick had a really strong show. Like, I mean, he was a legend at that point too, but I didn't know that. But he had an incredible show. I mean, his stuff, the stuff with it when the tennis ball vanishes is just. I mean, there's other things in the show that's probably stronger to lay people, but to a magician, the concept with the tennis ball and the I know what you want to see, and then it culminates in this vanish, and it's a real
the priming, the writing, the presentation of it. Yeah.
I mean, and the whole psychology of the whole thing, it's incredibly
mastercrafted.
Yeah, it's mastercrafted. There's no other word maybe.
And so you're doing your show, you're getting better over the months, you're doing the 100,000 times you failed. You're getting.
I would often go to Covent Garden for and do 1 or 2 shows and see Gary and talk with him, and then I would go over to South Bank, which had opened up that year basically. And there was really only one performer working there, and that was Paul. Evil Paul
Tolhurst, yeah.
And this is when he was still doing a tall unicycle show when he did the splits on the people's shoulders. And he was like the only person down there, really. And
so
I would go down there
to do lots and lots of shows, right?
Yeah, and I wouldn't even queue up with him because South Bank is a wide place. I went down there and just set up myself, and I would just bang out like 12, 15 shows, like short shows, 15, 20-minute long. But I would just like do a ton of them, like Gasso is still doing today.
Gazzo's amazing. You see him performing at the bottom of the high street. You go to the top of the high street, and he's performing at the top of the high street. How the hell are you doing this?
The work ethic is insane. But I had that work ethic that year, that summer, basically. I just banged out so many shows.
And was the stuff you were focusing on to improve? Was the things you were paying attention to inside the show, particularly to try and overcome problems there, try and make the show more effective and more interesting?
Yeah, I think I was. I'm a very analytical person, I would say. So I would just analyze the show and try to change something every show, like change or improve one thing. Like, and when shows went wrong, I would think about why did it go wrong and try to fix it.
Did you write stuff down? When you say you're analytical, did you use statistical?
Yeah, I also wrote stuff down. I have a big. I found one of those notebooks in my parents' house quite recently, and I remember there's one piece of advice that I wrote to myself that was covering 2 pages, really big, and it covers the whole thing, and it says, "Never say thank you to get applause." Was yeah.
Don't be needy, basically.
Also, there's something about it that signifies it's over. Like that was the end.
So it's a point of transitions. You don't want to make a transition and make it clear this thing's finished because you don't want people to leave till the end.
Exactly. It can turn your transition into an ending, and so in the feeling of some people, or I would lose people when I did that.
Okay, so how does the show progress then? What's the chronology? What's the next phases for you in your performing life?
Well, I did kind of two full-on seasons in Covent Garden, just doing like every day. And then winter came after that second year, and I kind of thought, I could probably do this anywhere. And then I bought one of those round the world tickets with a bunch of stops. And I started out in India, hanging out there for a while, and then I ended up and then I went through. I got to Australia fairly quickly, I think, and to Melbourne. And then there I was staying with a magician friend of mine called Simon in his parents' house. And I was that's also when I got to know Nick a little better, and a bunch of other street performers from Australia.
And so, did you go there to perform? Was that the idea of going to Australia?
Yeah, I mean, I was mainly my goal was mainly to survive the winter, so I would until the next summer season in Europe, or in Covent Garden. But then I kind of enjoyed working other spots that were not Covent Garden so much that that I never really went back.
What was it that you enjoyed about them?
That they weren't so messy.
What do you mean by messy?
Like Covent Garden is a messy place. It's noisy. There's so much going on. There's like, my show at least does best when there's a bit more focus. It's hard to have focus in Covent Garden, like proper focus.
Because there's someone taking a dick out in the side row of your show.
Yep. At that point in Covent Garden, there were no amps allowed either, obviously. Like there's no, you had to kind of shout everything. And that also costs it creates a strange, it doesn't suit my personality so much. Yeah, I think it's mainly a focus thing. I really liked to those more quiet things. There's also something about doing shows for locals that have never seen anything like it before that I really like. I mean, I after I left Covent Garden, I basically traveled for a decade.
How long did you spend in Australia after that? Because Australia, I assume, was not these things. Australia was standard pitches where people are queuing up and working.
Yeah, but Australia was just one of the stops, I guess. But I basically I would normally spend like 2 months in Australia every year, and then I would spend like the summer in Europe, basically. Later on, maybe in Canada,
but not Covent Garden so much.
But not really Covent Garden. And then the rest of the time, like the spring and the autumn, I would spend going to weird places, often where there were no street performers, or maybe where there had never been a street performer ever. I like to explore.
Was there any particularly interesting places you picked up? Because if you're going exploring around the world, there must have been some very, unique experiences.
Yeah, a fair amount. I mean, I did street shows on Rarotonga.
Where's Rarotonga?
It's one of the Cook Islands, so it's kind of between New Zealand and Los Angeles, somewhere.
It's in the middle of the Pacific.
Yep. And so I did shows there at this market that they had. I did a lot of shows in Southeast Asia.
When you did the show on the island in the Pacific, what were the people like? Because they couldn't have seen stuff like that. Surely they're the most isolated human beings can be.
It's an incredible experience to do shows in places where they haven't seen street shows. And maybe where they never seen a magic show. It's a really fun experience, and I really enjoyed that experience. And actually, very often, they will pay really well when you get to the.
You're like a real magician to them. They don't have a knowledge of it being culturally part of a craft.
Well, yeah, in Rarotonga they probably did. I've done shows for people that have never heard about magic as well. And that's a crazy thing. Like that to them, it's like real magic. But I mean, they know they have a concept of magic, but probably never saw magic live. They've never seen a street show, and so it's something extremely unique and special to them. And that's a great feeling. You can kind of get that in small towns anywhere in the world as well. So I did that a lot. Working in small places.
Yeah, is there an appreciation of people thinking you've come to our town, Of
Yeah.
all the places you could be, it's our place.
It's a beautiful thing, and the only problem with working small cities or small towns is that you'll last for like a weekend,
Before
and then
everyone knows
everyone's
who
seen
are.
you, and then you kind of have to move on. That's like the drawback of working those places. But it's a real beautiful thing, and I find it more fun than working somewhere like Covent Garden. But I mean, there's big pitches that are kind of quiet and nice as well, in some ways. Like the one in Melbourne used to be pretty sweet. The one by that little bridge. That's a quiet one. And Europe is full of those kind of plazas that are established or semi-established pitches that are kind of quiet and nice.
And did you get many problems performing? Did you ever get police coming up to you trying to stop you, or people running you out of the town?
Kind of all the time, very often. But it's fine. I mean, I'm kind of lucky in some ways. I mean, I'm kind of privileged in many ways.
How so?
Well, I'm like white, well-spoken, Swedish, not like they never try to arrest me when I'm drunk. I don't carry drugs around. I'm not like I've never got into real shouting matches with police. I've always been kind of firm but respectful. Like,
have you been successful at the time with that? Do you find that it's
very.
What's the ratio between success of getting them to leave you where you are and having to concede and pack up?
Semi-high, I would say, but the rate of success of being taken away to the police station or deported or and stuff like that is very, very high. But actually, this could be interesting to you, because in Covent Garden, we did have problems that second summer I was there.
Okay.
And they banned everything on James Street. And the reason was that someone who was kind of not really a serious street performer, but did shows and to get money for drugs mainly, I think. But someone was doing a show on the middle of James Street. It wasn't one of the established street performers, and I think there was a shoplifter in the boots that's up, like, just, it's probably still there.
Yes,
and
it is.
The staff was like confronting the shoplifter. I think the shoplifter pulled a knife, and they called the police. So they're in this situation in the boots, and the police are trying to get through, and that person had blocked off the whole street, and because it's very easy to block it off, and the police are trying to get through, and that performer thinks they're trying to stop the show, and is like just rude to the police and like, oh, don't let them through, and like this kind of shit. This is how I remember it, at least. And so that cost the police a couple of minutes, and I think they just went like, right, we're just going to ban everything on the street, and they did. And we had a real battle for a whole summer trying to get it to be allowed again to do street shows on James Street. And well, as we did speak about briefly, Gary was a solicitor. He studied law in Oxford, and he has his degree, but he never really worked as a solicitor. But he's used his knowledge a lot in as an entrepreneur, I think. But he knew much more about the law than any policeman, and we would have these fairly hardcore confrontations because we kept doing shows even though it was very banned, and the police would come to us pretty much every day and try to stop the shows. And I would just basically say, well, you should talk with my lawyer, he's right there. And then Gary would talk with them, and we would get into these real confrontations that was basically like, well, you either arrest me for a crime, and then I will like sue you for unlawful arrest or something, and then we'll meet in court and we'll see who's right. And if you don't want to go there, then fuck off, because I'm doing a show. And it would be pretty firm, and like we knew all those. Often it wasn't police that were trying to stop it. It was the community support officers that had also arrived like that year or the year before on the face of this earth. They were a new invention.
Yeah.
And that was pretty hardcore. And then I think at the end of the summer we had this big meeting with the council, where me and Gary and Kino did speeches for we talked, and we managed to convince them to allow it back as a pitch, kind of.
Okay, and that was just through chatting with them and saying, look, you've had a hassle for this long. We organise this. We're reasonable.
Yeah. Well, it was also just we were very firm, but then we kept working with the council, and we made up some very good arguments. Like we had, I think,
Dynamite's asking when it was. I think
yeah,
the year. So it's 2002.
This
2003?
would have been 3, maybe 2 or 3. Yeah, 3. And I remember Gary had a lot of legal arguments. He had asked one of his professors at Oxford to help him with some with whatever laws he should refer to. And I came in. My argument was basically like, because I started doing some festivals at that point, and or at least I'd been off to one festival in Belgium, I think, that was organized by, it was probably Antwerp. So I went in and said, like, well, last weekend the city of Antwerp flew me to Antwerp, paid me to do shows, lots of money they paid me, and they flew me back, and now I land here, and here I want to do these shows, and the city doesn't have to pay anything for that same show, and instead you want to arrest me. Like, that was my argument. And Kino came in and did something like, because the police, I think the chief of police was there as well, and he was like, I've been here for 32 years, and I've seen a lot of police commissioners come and go, some good, some bad, but I will tell you about, he did like a kind of history and pulled his, just as a legend and someone who has just been around for a very long time and speaks from deep experience kind of speech. Yeah. And that was the 3-pronged approach, kind of.
And in the end, you won. Hopefully, we'll have the same look in the future with the problems we have coming up. Let's see.
Yeah.
So, a couple of things that I want to touch on. First of all, you said you started doing festivals. So, when you started doing festivals, did people approach you on the street when you're doing shows? Did you actively search them out?
I got approached generally. I've pretty much never applied for festivals. I'm terrible at that side of the game, like the kind of business part of it. Really bad. Like I didn't have a website for 6 years, for instance, and I'm a computer programmer. And during that time, I built like 5 websites for friends, as like a thank you for letting me stay in their houses and shit. Like,
and why didn't you do a website for yourself? Do you not see it as important, or was there some kind of like, no, I'm a rogue, man, I don't need a website?
It wasn't attitude. It was just that I'm very bad at that. I'm very bad at making that sort of stuff happen. Like I would love to remember to apply for the Canadian Festival Circuit Lottery, but I always remember it like 2 weeks late. Like, not again, kind of thing.
And the other question I wanted to touch on with this is, over those 10 years of traveling and obviously doing festivals go around the world, how did your work change?
I think it got a lot more polished. Obviously, I did a lot of shows, I guess like we all do. I wasn't doing gazzo numbers of shows, but I would go out and do like 4 or 5 shows a day, generally, for all the days it wasn't raining.
So you were working really hard then?
Yeah, but it's also magic shows, so they're not physically hard in any way. And it's a fairly low energy show that I have.
So you're not drawing a lot out of yourself to deliver, and there's not a huge amount of improv, I imagine.
It's not super much improv. There's some, but much less than improv heavy shows, obviously.
Yeah.
And not at the level that requires a lot of energy, in that sense. So I could just do a lot. So yeah, I think, well, my show got very polished, and I think I had made some decisions, and I was really trying to do stuff that I liked in the show. So more and more, the show started filling up with lots of effects. I personally don't enjoy watching street shows that drag things out a lot, like street shows that have like three kind of short tricks in them, and then there's 40 minutes of filler between it.
The contract show.
I mean, filler might be a bit disrespectful to call it, but you know what I mean, at least.
You're holding the people you've got already to try and get
Yeah.
as maximum amount of people for the trick you deliver at the end, which
Yeah.
you supply the contract to the crowd with at the beginning.
Yeah.
Your typical contract show.
And I personally don't enjoy watching that at all. So I just really tried to fill it up with content, with material, and not have trying to not have dead moments, and just like put lots of stuff in. So I think that happened, that the show, one thing is that it started referencing itself a lot, like finding callbacks and stuff that recurs through the show, and like the same object being reused for another purpose later on, like these kind of things, where it makes it more into an organic whole.
So you started developing like a show character and a show logic. The show began to work with its own logic. The props were carried through, the themes were carrying through.
Yeah, and the show became a more complex piece of work in many ways. I think I really like complexity in shows. What's the principle? Oh, I should ask. Dynamite is just writing down. I think that's correct, Dynamite. That he's writing about the. He's asking about the legal thing.
The three prongs.
But that's a current battle in London right now again. But yeah, and so there's this KISS principle, right? That's often mentioned, like keep it simple, stupid. Keep things simple, and I really don't like that.
Why don't you like that?
Because it's boring. I like to make things complex, like the cock principle, I guess. Like keep it complex, kid. Badly spelled. So I think it's really great to make things complex, but they have to be clear. So I think that's you can't get rid of the clarity. But if things are clear, then you can make things very complex. Although in messy street situations, things start failing. So that's another reason maybe why I don't like messy pitches where there's too much other shit going on and too much noise over there, and like a truck driving behind you, and like yeah.
It's because you need to be able to control the environment to get these clock ticking cogs to turn at the right times.
Yeah, and if they look away, if their attention gets dragged away at the wrong second for 1 second, now they've missed a piece that they need, like that's necessary. And so that kind of show really suffers. The show that I do today really suffers from too much distractions going on,
which makes sense that you try and find quieter places to work it.
Yep.
And so we get up to, in 10 years now, we get it to about 2013, this sort of time. Am I right in thinking that?
Yeah, ish. 2010, 2011 is when I stopped doing street shows a little bit. Yeah.
And why did you stop doing street shows a little bit?
Well, I won Sweden's Got Talent, weirdly.
How did you get into doing Sweden's Got Talent? Were you spotted on the street the same as the other festivals?
Well, there's for a very long time, the other Swedish street performer, who is now Mr. Sven, obviously, but for a very long time, like the other Swedish. Now there's a couple more actually, but then there was really only two of us traveling on the sort of English-speaking circuit, and the other one was a guy called Johan Welten, who's a really good juggler, very solid. And he did it the year before me and finished second. And during that time, I helped him with ideas a bit.
When you say you helped him with ideas, sorry, you're telling me anyway. I keep asking you questions you're going to answer.
Yeah, he would bounce ideas off me, and he would discuss his scripts and this, I would be just helping out with different things for his acts. And I was there for the filming of the finale, for instance. And so I actually won some money betting on the finale because I saw the general rehearsal. and two acts really stood out. And I was like, yep, one of these acts is going to win it. And I placed some money on them. So I took home like £500 or £600 on
not bad
on that. And I put money on Johan and the other one won it in the end.
But the odds worked out that you could make money either way.
Yeah. I mean, and I knew the other ones were never not going to take it. But I kind of, after that, I kind of felt like I kind of get this now. And I also saw that he was treated decently by them. And I thought, well, if this happens some other time and I'm able to do it, then I will do it.
And when you say you get this, what do you mean you got it? What are you talking about getting?
I kind of understood the venue, I think. I understood what it was. And what works in some ways. And I think that's vital to it. Just the concept of what is it, and what I mean, we've all seen people coming into the street trying to do shows without understanding the venue, and they might be incredibly brilliant artists, but they can't even gather 5 people. There was a guy like that in Covent Garden when we started, around that time, around 2001. That was that guy was a circus juggler who was incredible, who started doing street shows and couldn't. And then people, I wasn't really so much hanging out with the piazza performers, but I know people try to give him advice, people that really know their shit, and he wouldn't really listen to them because he was a really established performer and
he had too much pride.
Yeah, couldn't. So it's the same with with the Got Talent thing. If you come into it not understanding the venue, and then you're screwed, kind of.
Yeah, and so you got asked the next year. How did you get asked? Did they contact you? Did they call you?
No, I didn't get asked, actually. I had a bit of a mental breakdown.
Okay.
And I had a relationship ended for me around the end of that summer, and I was really, really heartbroken, really heartbroken. And this was in Malmo, my hometown. And this girl that I've been seeing on and off for years, every time I was back in the city, we had this kind of on and off open relationship. And when that ended, my first thought was to go to Australia. And I went on the internet to buy tickets, and I was sitting there looking for a ticket to Australia. And then this thought just struck me that maybe the healthiest thing in the world when something bad happens is not to go to the other side of the planet. Maybe I shouldn't run away from these feelings, which is probably how maybe that's how I still live my life, but it
definitely seems like a healthy thought to have at the time.
Yeah. So I kind of went, no, okay, fuck it. I'm gonna stay in one place for a little while. I think I need to do that. And then I found that there was there's like a physical comedy school in Denmark, in Copenhagen, that was just starting. I think they had started like 1 week in. And I was talking with my friend Maurizio. Do you know? Have you ever met Maurizio?
The name doesn't fire off my brain instantly.
He's an Argentinian guy who has lived a lot in Sweden, and he used to do like a mime kind of breakdance street show. Really nice guy, and he had gone to this physical theater school, and he told me like, why did you go to the Comedia school? And I was like, well, for once they started like a week ago, and you needed to apply in April. And he was like, I'll talk with Ola, I'll get you in. So we went there together, and he was like, Ola, this is Charlie. He's a really good performer. He's going to be great to have in your class. If there's room for him, you should just let him in now. He'll catch up. And I just kind of jumped straight into this like theater school, and did that for a year.
And how is that in contrast to doing shows for 15 years nearly now?
Oh, at this point, it was maybe 10 years of shows, but it was good. It was interesting. I don't know what to make of it really. I mean, I was still doing street shows in Copenhagen in the evenings and stuff, but it taught me. I don't know how much it taught me about performing, but it taught me. I did learn a bunch of stuff. It's just hard to kind of put my finger on what they are.
So when you started doing the lessons, what struck you that was something you didn't know when you were in the lessons?
I think one thing that I saw that I still am not very good at, but that I started at least trying, is to have more precision in my work. I don't have a lot of precision.
Is that like the way you position your body, the way you emphasize things?
In kind of everything. I mean, I don't know what street performer is a good, like street performers in general. We are terrible at precision. We're kind of the opposite of that. Because
we're so used to going out there and just making it work.
Yeah, like there's one side which is the precision people, like very trained actors or dancers. Like they know exactly what every tiny thing is planned, right? And then on the other side is the more kind of like most street performers are, and certainly myself, is this more loose expression, which I mean, a lot of that is also planned out in some ways. I mean, I do the same thing every show, like the same movement that's very loose, but it's like, but there's a lack of precision, and but the audience experiences as very real. That thing that I do, that I've done thousands and thousands of times, they think it's new, they think it's fresh.
But is that because of the genesis of it? It's the fact that when you first did it, it was new and fresh, and then
possibly,
it got held on to.
Possibly, but it's also about a looseness and about another way, kind of. And I think it benefits people on that side of the fence to get some more precision in sometimes, and it definitely benefits this sort of like very precise performers to find a bit more of authenticity and like things that slip, to just make things feel more real and alive.
So what did you? Oh yeah, sorry. Carry on. No, carry on, buddy.
Someone who I'm really impressed with. There's a performer called Amy G from New York, and I often think of her as really being able to combine these things pretty well. Okay.
She constructs something which at the same time appears to be loose and free and of the moment.
Yeah.
Okay. So what did you personally get from the course by the end of it? What was the thing that changed in your work? I mean, I know you said you couldn't quite describe it, but I'm going to just try and get it out of you again if I can. You finished the course. Were you different?
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not sure. It was probably good for me to have some discipline, and I did spend time like in my flat just working on material and like, and I learned some precision. I think that's the main thing that I got out of it. I still don't have a lot of it, but
Yeah. Did Sweden's Got Talent interlink with this story as well then? Because I know we moved from that to this. So was that?
Yes, right. So right at the end of this, Sweden's Got Talent started out, and then so I was in Scandinavia when the things were happening, and I had already I had already met the people that were organizing it, and I had already seen things. So I just told them oh, if it's happening now, I'm in.
Yeah. And so did you go straight to a semi or a quarter? Was there some kind of agreement that you wouldn't go through the general heats, or did you start from the bottom up?
I just didn't have to do the things they do in the sort of pre-selection that they do in shopping malls and stuff.
Yeah.
That's all I didn't have to do.
And what was your experience of it like then?
It was good.
Well, obviously it was good.
Yeah.
You won.
It's stressful, and it's hard to do something where you're basically doing a new act because you have to squeeze whatever you're doing into tiny time slots.
Are you given 5 minutes?
No, well, now I think it's changed a little bit. Now they allow some acts a lot more time, but back then you were basically allowed. The first I was allowed 2 minutes, I think. The second one I did, I was allowed 1 minute and 53 seconds, and the last one I was allowed 1 minute and 47 seconds.
And so how did you apply, because street shows are fairly long form, how did you apply this work that you've done for years to being squashed and compressed so much?
Well, one way is that I was never super long form in some ways, because I did really enjoy just squeezing lots of material into whatever time
material
I had.
dense work.
Yeah. So I've never been someone who likes to stretch things out. So that worked really in my favor. And that's actually one of the drawbacks for any street performer that has that style, where you draw things out. If that performer then tries to go on stage indoors, it does not work. For some strange reason, it's functional, in the street. I hesitate saying the word works because I don't think it's very good. I personally don't like it. Maybe it's a taste thing, but it's definitely functional. There's something about it that works.
There's no question that some of the highest earning people on the street have these kind of contract shows.
Yep.
They have shows that function like this. And you have to imagine that people aren't, they're not completely with the performer's fingers in their brain. They're paying them because they've enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something I don't really understand so much. Although there's definitely also an aspect of the Hare Krishna scam. If you know this thing, it's a famous thing that in the 70s, the Hare Krishnas were handing out flowers in airports. There's even a Bill Hicks joke about it, where he's talking about the army. He's like the Iraqi army, and he's like, "Oh, it's the third." They were saying it's the third biggest army in the world. Well, between the first one and the second one, it's a really big drop, and the second one is the Hare Krishnas. And they already have our airports. Something like that is his joke.
Yeah. And so what's the relationship between the Hare Krishnas and the contract show?
The scam they used to do was they would stand in the airports, and when people would arrive, they would walk up to them and give them a flower and say, "Oh, welcome to Dallas." They would give them a flower, and people would be like, "Oh, thank you so much." And then they would hold out a thing and say, "Would you like to give a donation to our thing?" And people would be like, and then they would try to give the flower back, and the Hare Krishnas would be like, "Oh, no, that's a gift. That's a gift. But perhaps you would like to give a donation to the..." And just the social contract of it would mean that there's been a lot of psychological research on this, actually. And very often people would give money to them, and then they would walk off, and just 10 meters away, they would angrily throw the flower in a bin, while walking off. So
because they've been leveraged, socially leveraged.
Yeah. The social contract of it had been abused. So yeah, I think there's also some aspect of that.
So you think it's you've been here this long, you should pay me, and they're like, well, you've fucking fooled us to be here for an hour. Oh,
Yeah,
take my fucking money.
it's hard, and yeah, I don't know. It's a tricky. I can't really place my finger on it. I mean, there are also those kind of shows where what's going on in between is damn funny, right? That also exists. So this is more.
But then that's a different thing. The focus changes then, because
Yeah.
then it's not really about the end goal. It's about the journey, and the contract isn't
Yeah.
necessarily important. It's the fact that you're
Right.
being entertained.
So my thoughts on this is more aimed on the shows that aren't incredibly damn funny while keeping people waiting.
Well, let's say it's the shows that lack content, and content's the big thing. You know, if you're being funny, you're being funny because you have funny content.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true. That is very true. Like in many ways, I would say that someone like Byron, in Straight Jack Joe, it does keep people waiting a lot, but the waiting is incredibly funny. So that is the content in more than the other stuff. And
well,
then
the Straight Jack at the end is just a vehicle for him to tell jokes to people.
Yeah,
it holds the people there.
In that case, my thoughts don't apply on this. Like that, and I do love that show. Like it's
one of the funniest shows in the world. I think he's brilliant. And it's no question he's being so successful on the stage doing stand-up now. But the thing we were talking about before with this was that two things. I was going to talk about doing a minute, but I think I wanted to touch a little bit more on this. Street performers being terrible on stages. They take that slowly style and they go on the stage. They try to do it on the stage and people just go, I'm already here. Why are you keeping us waiting?
Yeah. It's oh yeah, so I'm really terrible with tangents. I go on.
Okay, it's a good tangent. So you've worked your material into 1.5 minutes, right? For Sweden's Got Talent. Did you pick a particular piece, one piece? Did you pick a selection of stuff and reorganized it for the show? Were they original works?
The first act I kind of created for it. And the second act I took basically my 9-minute long Cups and Balls act and turned it into 1 minute and 53 seconds.
So you took the talking out, basically, majority of the talking.
Well, no, I never had much talking anyway. So I took one of the cups out for time. Like it was it's a completely different act in many ways. Like if you look at it, it's basically I just sat down and said, okay, I'm going to take out one of the cups for time, and then I'm just going to try to get to the end as fast as possible, because that's what I have to do. It's really good in some ways. Like if I look at it now, I'm like, that is a really good 1 minute and 53 seconds.
So you think it was helpful in the end to do that, to feel the pressure of time?
Well, actually, a helpful thing is if you have like a 10-minute act and you're forced to cut it down to let's say 2 minutes, you will be cutting away essential things, unless that 10-minute act is full of bullshit. You're cutting it down to 2 minutes. You're going to cut away essential things, not just good things that you can be without, but are maybe worth having in there. But you're going to cut away essential things. And when you're doing the act, you're going to miss them. You're really going to feel like, man, that thing really needs to be in here. And then after having done a couple of shows of that short show, if you now try to make the act into 4 minutes or 5 minutes, you're going to put in everything that's essential, and that's going to be a really strong act.
What a great writing process to cut away everything, all the fat, even to the point where it's anorexic, and then slowly layer the fat back onto the body again.
And you're really going to, like, when you cut away to that point, you're going to see where the bones are breaking and be like, oh man, there needs to be more thigh, because this is and then you add it on, and then but you keep most of the stuff that is not necessary. If you then leave that out, then you have something that's very concentrated.
And so what was the experience to win like then? As however you want to describe it?
I was very shocked. Mainly, I didn't think it took a while to it took me a while to kind of realize that it had happened in some sense. So I was more mainly in shock. I think, like, what? Some
Did
kid
you
or dog
believe
was supposed to
other
win the.
people were going to win? Was there somebody else around you at the time competing in the final with you?
Yeah, there were some very talented people in the finals. So it was. I didn't think I was going to win, but also that was not my goal. My goal going into it was just to be seen by some producers and get, like, 4 or 5 gigs in Sweden every year, where someone would fly me back from wherever I was so I could visit my family. That was my outspoken goal for myself of going in, was to get a couple of gigs every year where someone else would pay for my flight home to visit my family. That was basically it.
I assume that winning got you more than that.
Yeah. At that point, I pretty much took a break from street performing for a year and a half.
I've got to run for 1 second. Please just carry on. I'll pick back up with you. Yeah. Cool.
Okay. Okay. He's gone. I've never been very funny. I should have improvised something good there, but oh well. I'll just keep telling the story, and he's gonna miss it. I wonder what he's doing. Yeah. Where were we? Can anyone remind me? I've had a long 2 days. My brain is fried. He's. I've done. Oh.
Yo.
I was unable to fill the time in a good way. We probably lost about half the viewers. But
oh, we didn't. Don't worry. I'm sure everyone was fully engaged. So we were talking about changing your life with. So you wanted to get 4 or 5 gigs a year to get you back home, but it didn't do that. It did more than that.
Oh right. Winning. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So I took about 1.5 years kind of off doing street shows and just tried to have a mainstream career in Sweden, doing like theater shows and television and stuff. And that went decently. But I was not having fun.
Why?
And I didn't enjoy that world, and I really missed like our people. Like
I get you, but I hate to focus on the negative. But what was it about the world of doing gigs around and doing television? What was it about that world you didn't enjoy?
I mean, with television, it's that they don't think of quality. Good enough is good enough, right? Okay is good enough, and then we move on.
Is that the need to keep creating constantly new things?
Yeah. And I really like to dig in and like if we do 2 more shoots of this thing that I spent 6 weeks developing, if we spend another half hour shooting it, we're gonna have a better result. No, we're done. That was good enough. Let's go. Pack up. Go. It's like it's horrible. But also, I mean, I guess that the 10 years of street performing that I had then had also kind of alienated me from a large part of the population.
In what way?
Like, I think to people like us, that in many ways the way we think and how we live and how we think about life and what's important and like and the experiences that we talk about and remember, and that is very different from like a lot of people, and it's hard to relate. It's hard to relate, at least for me, to a lot of people. But with the street performing world, I can pretty much relate to everyone. I remember at some point then, after being, I told someone that I would rather sit. It was like I would rather. No, I have to line it up in the way to sit with like a normal person, rather than sitting with a normal person in a bar that I like. I would rather spend time in a bar with a street performer that I hate.
Just because
kind
there's a
of-
shared knowledge of the world.
Yeah, and there's a shared experiences, and there's like a shared mythology, and like it's like we are part of a weird secret society in some ways with our own like folklore. That I mean, like I guess like you and the busking project and stuff are kind of saving for
Trying
the
to.
future in
Trying
some
to.
yeah, at least like preserving some of it. But I mean, to me, that's I really started missing our community. And I mean, still today, most of my best friends are out there traveling, and if I want to see them,
Well,
I have to do that too.
not this day.
Okay,
Not this
well,
day.
fair enough. I planned it badly. It was supposed to strike when you were all in Stockholm. That was the
Yeah.
um,
Well, there'll be another opportunity. We'll make sure that we're all in one place the next time.
perfect. Yeah,
Yeah.
it should have happened during Edinburgh.
Oh, it would have been great. Locked in Edinburgh with a million other people who wanted to see shows. Everyone's already been in contact with each other, so there's no point in isolating. Just do shows. So talking about
Yeah.
Edinburgh, I did a bit of research before we did the interview, and there was a show that I read about which seemed incredibly interesting to do with robotics. Got a lot of 5-star reviews in the fringes. Is this close in terms of time? Is it a natural thing to move on to, or is there a lot in between?
It's probably fairly natural. It comes a bit later, but yeah, it's there's not a lot going on in between.
Let's talk about you going back on the street. What was it like to go back on the street then after doing the TV stuff and after being a star in Sweden?
It was beautiful. I love street shows so much. It's the audience that they are society, like it's the world in a way, and I love the freedom of it. And I didn't go back to doing street shows full time, but I went back to doing street shows like a percentage of the year. So I go out and do festivals and street for a couple of months every year at least. Also a lot for social reasons, to like hang out with the people that I love in a natural way. And I love it so much. And now during COVID, I mean, the stuff that I missed the most, is those things. And I mean, today I often do Perth, Adelaide, and Edinburgh Fringe every year, and then I do a bunch of the street festivals, and then I do maybe like a month of regular street mixed up in things.
Yeah, I certainly know from Edinburgh, the half of the joy of Edinburgh, because I can make as much money in London, probably easier time because most of the performers are there. The joy is that your family's there. It's people I don't see all year long. I love to see them. I love some of the happiest times of my life are that month of the year where you're all together and everyone kind of gets each other. We get the world we live in. Yeah,
it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And just the kind of closeness of like, I've had street performers stay on my couch that I basically didn't know at all. They just wrote me like, hey, my name is this, I'm a street performer, and this person told me I can stay at your place probably. And I really love that. And I've done that as well with people. I stayed at my boy's house like that, actually.
You say you didn't know them, but you kind of do know them. You know the street performers. You've got an idea of their shared experience. Yeah, of course. There is that. And it's like, and I really love that. There's something about them that we also, we help each other out when it's really needed. There's a lot of really beautiful things about the street performing community. And I've always been a little bit of an outsider, I think, in my life, or not an outsider, but I've never really felt part of any group. I was never suited to team sports, really. I never get sucked into like group dynamics, really. I'm very much
yeah, I think the first group that I ever really felt really part of is the street performers, which is really weird because we're the most disparate group of like herding cats, weird shit
Yeah.
exists, right?
But
It's
that's the
such
thing
a
is that we're
strange mix.
all very different. We're all very different, and we're all moving around in our own little place, but yet we do feel like a tribe. There is that
Yeah.
sensation of
Yeah.
that. And I think we could gush for the next 2 hours about street
Yeah,
performance.
yeah.
But we're reaching the last 24, 23 minutes of the interview. So I want to touch on some of the stuff you did after that.
Uh-huh.
So why did you move and do a show with robotics? Well, what was the drive for that?
I started doing high-tech stuff with my friend Eric, who actually is a street performer. He's part of a group called Circus Alphon.
Okay.
And they were never working a lot in the English-speaking world, but they did a lot of street shows in the German-speaking world. And
what kind of
yeah.
stuff did they do?
They started at being like a fake music group in a set, or like they played music, but they were also doing like circus tricks in between and stuff, and very funny stuff. And now they do a lot of high-tech things. Incredible, actually. And they won the Pick of the Fringe in Adelaide like 2 years ago.
Wow. And when you say high-tech things, are they kind of hacking toys and hacking musical instruments, or?
Yeah, all kinds of stuff. Like lots, they did one show here with like 3 LED walls and an LED floor, and like they've done a lot of stuff with projectors, audio things. Yeah, it's high-tech stuff. And me and Eric used to go swimming together like 3 times a week at one point. And then I got offered to do a gig with high-tech stuff. And I think the brief was, we want you to create an act about Stockholm using some that's high-tech.
When you say high-tech, can you define it a little bit better? Is it just using technology?
Yeah, in that brief, they didn't define it, I think. It was just like, we want it to be super high-tech and modern.
It's quite a producery kind of thing. We want it to be, futuristic.
Yeah, exactly. And then that act became really successful. And then me and Eric started doing high-tech stuff. And I've always been into, I was a computer programmer, obviously. And then I started building robots at home for fun.
Why? You say for fun, but why was it what was it that captivated you to build robots?
It's cool, right? Robots, like
it's very cool. It is cool, but I want to get into it a little bit more. What you found cool about it, what you found interesting, what captivated you about it to begin with.
Well, I get into electronics as well. Like I started buying old electronics in like the secondhand store, op shops and stuff, and taking them apart and trying to understand how they worked and like hacking them to do other stuff. Like buying an old electronic typewriter and hacking it so that if you hit any button, it starts typing on its own, and it types out like, "Help! I'm trapped inside a typewriter." Like, just weird shit, right? And
was the joy of that because you wanted to? It was a pragmatic task of figuring out how something worked. It was like when you discovered magic and you got into learning how magic worked.
Yeah, I think so. I like understanding stuff, and then I had a period when I got really into like understanding electronics and trying to, just figuring out how shit works. And then I had the same period about mechanisms and stuff, like mechanical things.
So automata and things like that.
Yeah, and like like gears and pulleys and just strange contraptions, kind of. And then I guess those things kind of combined into trying to build robots. So I built a robot. It's a bunch of years ago now, that I just built for fun, and then I was like, I can maybe do some kind of magic act with this.
What was the robot you built?
It's the one. It's in the show. It's a little robot that looks like me. It didn't at first, but very quickly when I built the robot, I was fascinated by this thing called the uncanny valley, which is when some kind of special effects gets close to looking like a human. And there's a point when it goes from being like a puppet, which we don't find creepy, into looking enough like a human that it becomes something really creepy about it. And I got fascinated by this, and I started exploring it a little bit. And I ended up 3D printing my head and my hands and putting it on the robot. I also experimented with making a little suit for it that looked like my suit and the hat and stuff. But in the end, it was nicer to keep it as a robot. But I made that, and then that act, it wasn't very strong in the beginning, but I really liked it.
Just before we go on, what was the functionality of the robot? I mean, it's not a model; it's a robot. It does things. What does it do?
It can move like a human almost. Like it's got like 20 motors inside it. So it's very kind of, it can, you can have it do push-ups or whatever. Like it can do a lot of stuff. So in the beginning, it's just I put it up on the table, and it's like this kind of shapeless thing. You can't really tell what it is. And then it starts moving, and then it stands up, and then you see that it's a miniature version of me. And then we start doing the same movements at the same time. So it's a weird little mime piece almost, where we're doing exactly the same movements. And then it breaks when our head starts moving, and my head kind of stops here, but the head of the robot keeps spinning. And I'm like, and then it kind of turns into a magic trick where we alternate doing tricks for each other. Like I do a trick for the robot, and the robot does something to me, and then
And you said when you first started it didn't work properly.
Well, no, it worked, but it wasn't very strong.
And why wasn't it very strong, in your opinion?
Because it's really difficult to develop a new act that there's very little precedence to look at. I think it just takes a lot of time.
And so you just kept doing it and doing it? Were you writing stuff down?
No, I just kept doing it. It kind of developed organically, where I would do it, and people would like it because there was something new and fresh about it, and there is something really eerily beautiful about this little mime sequence and stuff. That's like, there's something nice about it that was there from the beginning, and then but I have to do it every night, so I'm like, the stuff that's not good in it start irking, and it's like, it really needs something to happen here. Because
can you give an example of what wasn't good?
There just wasn't enough in it.
It was filler.
In the beginning. Like in the beginning, it was basically just a little mime sequence. And then I would pull out a little red handkerchief, and I would make it vanish, and the robot would make it appear, and that was it. And then it developed a fair bit in its detail and in its kind of tone. I would say more. It's like a little weird, almost. It's hard to define, but it has evolved a lot. I've done like 5 or 6 reprogrammings at least.
And did its mechanism stay the same? But you just reprogramming
yes, very much so. I've made a new mechanism now, but that's mainly for repair purposes, because you have to. It often breaks, never during shows, but like during transport or overtime. And
I suppose that's the question. I'm very impressed that you say it never breaks, because I use microphones and speakers and tape players, and I curse using technology.
Right. Well, it's a lot about double and triple checking, and also the technology that you built yourself. When it's about to break in some ways, and when it does, you can repair it yourself very quick, or you can Jura rig it very quickly, and then fix it properly after the show and stuff. So that happens to me a lot.
And you were talking about having a second one for repair purposes. So is that kind of to switch them over, or
no? I never carry a second one around. But yeah, now I built a new one that I can repair easier, because the original one works perfectly, but there's some cables and some motors that if you want to replace them, it's like half a night's work. So this new one I have makes it much easier to access parts of it.
So you made it easier to tear down.
Yeah, there's 2 motors in the old version, or 3 actually, where if you have to change them out or change out one of the cables that's part of it, you basically have to take the whole thing apart. Like it's a very time-consuming process. So,
and I suppose you weren't thinking about using this touring round as a consistent thing forever in your act when you first made the first robot.
oh no, it was just playing around, but I'm not sure if I would have built it then. I didn't understand enough back then, so it is what it is. I really love the act. It's a really fun act.
How long was the act when it began?
Probably very short, like 1.5 minutes or something.
And how long is the act now?
3.5 maybe.
Okay, so there's a lot of stuff that's been added in there then.
Yeah, but also like extending the things that work, and there's some really nice stuff. I don't know if you know about my theme with the bow ties.
No.
Generally, I have a theme, not always in the street, because sometimes it's too subtle for the street. Going back to the complexity thing we talked about before, but normally during my show, my bow tie keeps vanishing and appearing out of places. Or it always starts like if I pick up a box and then I open it and then I pull out a bow tie and now they see that it's gone and it's like, oh, it got us again. When did it vanish?
Yeah.
That's kind of the thing. So now the act ends with the little robot picking up a little box, a deck of cards, a card box. And before it, I've had someone name a playing card. And I failed at finding it. I failed at getting it. And then I just kind of don't mention it. And then it goes on. And now the robot, and then it pulls out, and then I'm like, name a card. And then I name the card again. And I'm like, oh, and I open up the box. And inside the box is a bow tie. And also the robot is wearing a little bow tie, obviously. And it's my bow tie. And it's like, but that was not a card. In this box, there is one card, and then I pull out the card that they have in.
And you get a topper.
Yeah.
And you have an AI that you worked with an information company to use in the show, right? Furhat, am I mispronouncing the company?
Furhat is the name of the company. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I did a gig once for them, where it was a fairly big gig. Like we have to spend a week writing and doing stuff at least. More actually, more time.
So when you say a gig, would it be a gig that's described as corporate entertainment?
Kind of, yeah. I was like kind of the opening act at this big like computer linguistics or like speech synthesis conference.
And I suppose this was because of the routines with the robot, which would fit really nicely with this.
And it was, but I did a custom written act with the Furhat robot. And I asked them, they asked me what my fee was, and I said I want a robot as my fee, and I managed to negotiate to get one, even though they are very expensive. And then I created the act. Then I worked with a robot, so that robot is in the show. Now, actually, they have hired me. I'm a full-time employee currently at Furhat Robotics.
Okay, and what have they hired you to do? Are you programming? Are you working?
Yeah, I program a lot, and I create interactions. And actually, today or yesterday, I was a speaker at an AI conference, basically telling a bunch of PhDs in robotics my view on AI stuff.
Through your extensive experience being a street performer,
which is interesting. But you know, I program with it. But what made them hire me is that I had worked with it a lot, and I had like used it in really interesting ways and found things that were interesting to them.
So just for people who might want to understand what we're talking about here, maybe for myself as well, because it's an AI, it uses learning algorithms, right?
It's managed. It's a very complex. It's basically an operating system, and it can do a lot of things. So you can have it do. Yeah, it's very, very versatile, I guess. I could program it. I have one at here. I can show it to you.
Yeah, please.
I have one here at home, and I could program that to be like a home assistant, where I say like, oh, can you play some Tom Waits, and it will start playing Tom Waits songs. Like that would be trivial. I could do that in a couple of hours probably.
But when you say it's an artificial intelligence, it has some mode of learning, right? It's saving correct solutions to problems.
In the show, that's probably more marketing speech than anything from my side. Yeah, I mean, AI is a term that means a lot of things, but it is very capable of interaction. Like it is a social robot. So this is what it looks like. This is one of the versions. Oh, yeah.
I'm going to put you on the bigger version of the screen just so we can see this better. I think this is fascinating.
This is the robot, and inside is a projector that can project onto the face from the inside. So it can have all kinds of facial expressions and stuff. I'm trying to put the face in, watching the wrong way. So it can show all kinds of facial expressions. It's got a really good camera, and it uses a lot of algorithms. So it can see who you. If you walk up to it, it can look you in the eye and say, "Oh, hi, how are you?" And it can see if you're smiling or if you're angry, and like you can speak with it, and like
it recognizes facial expressions to try and guess what you're feeling.
Yeah, it's a very complex thing. I'm pretty sure that in that show I had other systems in the robot show that controlled it, but I'm pretty sure in the next show I use this. I will also use it as like the music player. I will start my music by telling it, "Oh, can you start this song?" and it will just do it. Like
I always had this hope that you'd kind of fake that with Siri, that you'd be able to use Siri and you'd mix Siri with recorded processes, and so you could say, "Siri, play this," but then you actually get Siri to play a long recorded conversation with you in Siri, but the technology was just never there.
Right. Oh, I should go back to where my internet is a bit better.
There you go.
We'll have the same situation again.
And so when you use that in the show, what do you use that in the show for now? Because that can't do what the other robot does. He's not physically manipulating things.
No. In the robot show, there's like 10 or 12 robots. It depends a bit on your definition of robot, but there's a bunch of robots in the show. No. There's a big eye that's walking around on like spider legs, like. There's a little version of the butter robot from Rick and Morty.
When I saw that on the poster, I didn't know whether or not you inspired that or that inspired you. I was debating.
Oh no, that inspired me, of course. But I do. But it's probably a lot of people's favorite robot in the show. Even though it's a fairly simple robot. I need to get my charger from here.
It's got a lot of character to it.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful setup. That's actually some storytelling that I'm proud of. During the show, I in the beginning of the show, I replicate the butter thing from Rick and Morty, where it comes up. I get a toaster shoots some toast up into my hand, and then this robot drives out and like, "Perhaps some butter," and we get that scene of no, and like, "What is my purpose? You bring butter." Oh my God. That thing. And then during the show, at several points, almost at random points in the show, the robot comes driving in, like, "Perhaps some butter." And I'm like, no, this is a show. It's not a sandwich. Like, go away. And it like does this kind of sad body expression and just rolls back. And the audience are like, "Oh." And
how
then
great.
And then at the end, I'd make this big machine with gears and I start it, and it starts going, and then it's like, and the robot head, the Furhat, is like, it's jamming, and I'm like, "Oh shit!" And I shout at the technician, "Do we have anything like some kind of motor oil, some kind of?" And then this little robot drives in like, "Perhaps some butter," and it's like, "Yeah."
And everyone's happy because the robot's got his resolution.
Yeah. So it's a nice.
I say it's got its resolution.
Yep.
And when I hear you say this, it just makes me think that maybe doing the theatre school possibly gave you more understanding to create this, because it's complex work by the sounds of it.
No, it's very possible. It is very possible, but I think it gave me more precision. But yeah.
Is it a pain in the arse to travel with? Because it sounds like it's a lot of gear.
Oh, you have no idea. You have no idea. The robot show, when I traveled to Australia last time, it's 2 times 23 kilos of very well packed bags.
Wow.
And then it's most of my hand luggage. So my personal items that I can bring myself is like a fresh pair of underwear, kind of. That's about it.
And I assume there's a lot of construction when you get there then, because if they're packed so tight, they're not in their usable forms.
And a lot of broken things that you then have to fix over there. And it's happened that I have to find a 3D printer. Like I have to find someone in the city with a 3D printer and like, can you print me 3 of this, and send them a model. And I often have to, I bring a lot of tools as well, like multimeter and soldering iron and lots of components of the things that might break. It's a real adventure. Actually.
And do you see yourself carrying on working with the robots, creating more elaborate, bigger pieces? Do you see yourself kind of reverting back to being more of a streety in your older age?
I don't know. Yeah, I will definitely do street shows my whole life, I'm pretty sure. But I have a robot in the street show for many years now. At least in the longer, it depends on how long the show I do. But if I do like the long version, there's always a robot or 2 in it, which is crazy because if it rains, it's real bad. But
I was going to say, how do you use the robots in the street in an uncontrolled environment? Because it sounds like you've got. Sorry, it sounds like you've got on the stage, you've got them programmed so they're like a cacophony, that one thing is going off as another thing's going off. If a drunk walks in and you're about to begin the robot bit, you're fucked, I assume.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, they live or the robot that I use in the street show, that lives in a suitcase that's waterproof and it's pretty safe in there. So if something happens, I just put it in the box and like it's fine, I guess.
And do you have a way to control it, to pause it, to stop it? Once you set it off, is it kind of in motion and you have to play to it?
And that particular robot has a couple of steps to it, or like it's got it's basically one flow, but there's a couple of intervals where I can break, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, so if something happens, you can stop it there, deal with it, come back.
Yeah, I can't stop it anywhere, but it's possible to stop and take something in and then keep going. But yeah, it pretty much runs.
Okay, we've got to, I think, about nearly 2 hours now.
Oh my god!
So
wow.
Time flies. So you've done a lot in your time, in your 20 years of performing, and you've done really original, interesting stuff. You've had a huge amount of success. You've really enjoyed the life you've had. It appears to me, at least. Is there any advice you want to give people who are beginning busking or performing or beginning to be an illusionist right now?
Oh, yeah, I would kind of say like if you're doing street shows, it's good to think a little bit on that. It's good if the material can work on stage as well, which means avoiding those breaks, because it's there's going to be if you're like a young street performer, there's going to be a point when you want to take it on stage, and then you have the option of, are you going to take this thing on stage that you've done 5,000 times? Because if you can't, because that doesn't work on stage because it's got too much dragging out and like making people wait, then you have to start over and do something that you've done 0 times, and that's not as easy at all. So maybe that I think people should try to create the kind of show that they would like to see. Like that's a good thing. Like, would you want to sit and watch this? If yes, then create it. Like just play around and I mean and have fun and try to write some original things, like do some original work, because it really pays off in the long run. It doesn't. I don't know what
the thing with the festivals,
like no? Pay on. Huh?
Detrimental. It's detrimental.
Yeah, it might even be detrimental in the short run. Like doing the standard bits is a shortcut, but it's a shortcut with very low potential. Like in the end, like it goes here and then it stops there, kind of.
Well, if you've heard it 100 times and you're beginning, imagine how many times a festival promoter has heard it, or a booker, or you know.
Yeah. It's and just trying to have. I mean, and stuff like. I mean, people say that, but try to avoid all the stock lines. I mean, I still have some stock lines in my show, and I've tried to actively remove them for like 10 years.
The fuckers creep back in, though, don't they? They creep back in.
Exactly. Once they're in there, it's so hard to get them
I wish
out.
I'd never started. Honest to God, wish I'd never started using Hack. I wish I'd original from the beginning. I feel like it would have been a longer, harder journey to start with, but you would have been so much more yourself by the end.
Yeah, there is a real, and there's a sense of pride, a genuine pride in the performers that we all look up to the most, like the real original people of, I mean, those are the people that we as a community revere the most, are the people that really created a lot of things. And the people that have done that, they have a sense of pride that is actually a life, like it's worth something in life. Like you feel better about, like there's something like genuine about it.
And also as well,
towards that is a nice thing. Like
and if people create new stuff, like look at the guys, I won't name them all now because they get named in the shows a lot, but people who create new stuff, they give back to their community. They inspire people to do different things. They move the art form forward. They move the context of performance forward instead of just being in the same spot doing the same fucking lines.
Yeah, and in the long run, it has so much more potential for things happening in 15 years. You know, like there's so many potential things that are great that can happen down the line for the people that do there and that go in that direction. So that would be my advice. I wish I had done it a lot more than I have.
Same thing. Same thing. You know? And the last thing, we've had a lot of friends who've been watching. I'm sure towards, you know, after a couple of weeks of the show going on, majority of the people that in our scene, a lot of them will have watched the show. Is there anything you want to say to them?
Oh, watch this?
Yeah.
Oh. Hi guys, I love you so much. I miss you so much. That's probably what I want to say. I can't wait to see our community again. Because it's the best part of my life is when I hang out with you guys. I think it really is. Actually, I think I can easily say today that the happiest time in my life was when I was a traveling street performer completely.
I believe you, mate. I believe you. So that's a lovely point to end on. Charlie, thank you for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah, ditto. So nice.
Really, my pleasure. Everyone has been watching.
See you next Edinburgh.
You know it. You know that. Everyone has been watching. It's been a pleasure chatting. Thank you for watching. If you're on YouTube, subscribe. If you're on Facebook, follow, comment, chat, share. Go to the Patreon if you can. Everyone, for now, all my love. I say goodbye from me.
Kisses.
Bye.